Hi, I'm Old Norse Specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford, and in this installment of our Old Norse language lessons in my new series on my channel, we're going to look at the next big category of words in Old Norse that we haven't covered yet, which are prepositions. Now, if you had English classes in high school that weren't worth much, and for the most part I would say mine weren't, you may not know what a preposition is very clearly. And the best guidance that I got about what it means when I was just starting to learn a little bit about grammar is that it's any word that can fit into the blank in the sentence, the bee flew blank the tree. So the bee flew over the tree, under the tree, in the tree, into the tree, over the tree, etc. That is all, even if it doesn't make sense necessarily like the bee flew under the tree, if it grammatically makes sense, that is a preposition. And so that, I think, came from a middle school English teacher. I can't remember now. But that has helped me to remember it. Now, of course, a lot of this is very, very, very frequent vocabulary in Old Norse. But you have to know that each preposition assigns a certain case to the noun that comes after it. Now, typically, that would be dative. Accusative is also pretty common, but genitive does happen, and genitive does happen with one of the very most common prepositions, which is till, meaning to. So in Old Norse, till is always followed by the genitive, a little bit unusual for English expectations. So when you say in Old Norse, come to me, you say effectively, come to mine, kom du til min, right? Or dvergarnir reru til lands, the dwarves rode to land. Notice lands is the genitive of neuter noun land. All right, so let me just give you a quick look at the most common ones, and I'm going to give you a couple examples to give you a sense of how they're used, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about something that happens with some of them about how they can govern actually a dative or an accusative. And we speak of prepositions governing particular cases. That's the case that will follow that preposition. All right, so we've got or, that means out of. So, drakk han alt or óðreri. He drank everything out of Óðrir, from the story in the prose edda where Óðrir is the name of the vessel, not the meat itself. Með, and or takes a dative. Með, meaning with, takes a dative or an accusative. Now, með has a variety of uses, just like in English. You can strike someone með sverði, with a sword, or you can travel með konu, with a woman. Með has both those accompanying senses and also those instrumental senses. I have never noticed a strong pattern in whether it is followed by a dative or an accusative. I would say the instrumental senses tend to be followed probably with a dative, but I don't detect a strong pattern or an absolute pattern that way, and definitely not a strong pattern in the sense of accompaniment. Like you can say með henni, with her, but also með hana, with her, in terms of accompaniment. Or, which means on, I'm going to talk about this. That has dative versus accusative, but it's in a pattern that I'll talk about in a minute with some other prepositions. I, which means in, that's also dative or accusative based on a grammatical pattern that we'll get to. At means at. Or of, these mean around. They're also used as filler words in poetry. Is used later in time than ov is. Ov kind of becomes archaic after a period. But they're used alongside each other in the archaic Viking Age poetry, the Poetic Edda. So han fór víða heim. He traveled widely around the world. Av means from, especially in the sense made from or made of. This is obviously related to English of, but it's never used in the possessive sense of English of. So, þó tekur hann hein af belti sér, then he takes a whetstone from his belt. So it is being taken from it, but it's not a geographic from. It's a good way of thinking about of. It's from, but not geographic from, which is frå, which also takes a dative. Someone is frå Islandi, frå Noregi, from Iceland, from Norway, or perhaps traveling frå Sveiariki, traveling from Sweden. That's when you use frå, from. Við means against, but it also means with in senses that are not accompanying or instrumental. So, þeir blendu hunangi við blóðið. They blended honey with the blood. So, that's not accompaniment, that's not instrumental, that is a sort of additive or complementary sense of with, and við is used in those senses. Obviously this is related to English with, but með is used for most of the senses of English with. Yfir means over. That also is used in a pattern like O and E that I'll talk about soon. Fyrir means for, and that can be used so for before. If you were standing before someone, that would be in the dative, right? So standing fyrir konungi, before the king. Gegnum means through. Imoti, or just moti, means against. So for example, in Hrjóta Spanirnar upp imoti honum, the wood shavings bounce up against him. Hjó means beside or next to. Bolverker lo hjó henni þrjár nætur. Bolverker, evildoer, name of Odin, lay next to her for 3 nights. Eftir, after or along. So this is used maybe in some different ways from how do you expect it in English. It's definitely used in the sense of after. But notice in these examples, Baugi stakk eftir honum nafrenum. So Baugi stuck the drill after him, so into a. This is when Baugi is with Odin, and they've drilled a hole into the cave, and Odin slithers through it as a snake, but Baugi starts stabbing after him with the drill they used. Suttungr flaug eftir honum. Suttungr flew after him. But I believe, I don't have this quote right on the top of my lips, unfortunately, but I believe that Ratatoskr runs after the trunk of the tree Yggdrasil, which is a little bit different from how you say it in English. So after can kind of mean along like that. Undir, which means under. And then, so when we have something like yfir, over, undir, under, I meaning in, o meaning on, we have a particular distribution of dative versus accusative. They don't take just one or the other, they take one or the other depending on what's going on. So if the subject is stationary, they take a dative, all right? So, for example, if you are in a well, or on Iceland, they speak of being on island, or the tree, the roots of Yggdrasil are over Midgardr, something like that, then the object is dative. But if the subject is moving, then the object is accusative. So what the subject is doing determines what case the object is in. So for example, þeir letu renna blóð hans í tvær ker. They let his blood run into 2 buckets. So the blood is moving. Since the blood is moving, the buckets are accusative. Hann kastaði hinni í loft upp. He cast through the whetstone up into the air. Loft, air, is accusative because the whetstone is moving into it. Þá buðu dvergarnir Gillingu at roa o sa með sér. Then the dwarves asked Gillinger to row onto the sea with them. So with in and on, you can kind of think of it as into and onto. taking accusative. Han skal fara upp över dörrarna. He will go up over the doors. Since he is moving, then doors is accusative. And I'll show you a lot more examples here on the screen and then in the slides to come, so you can maybe get a better sense of what I'm talking about with some more examples. But your vocabulary assignment then is the various prepositions that I've just given you here. So to and of course memorize them with the cases they take. So just to refresh you, those are or, out of, med, with, or, on, till, to, in, at, of, around, of, from, with, against, over, for, before, gegnum, through, moti or moti, against, hjå, next to, besides, efter, after or along, from, especially in a geographical sense, under, and that will be a pretty good set for you to learn for next week. And then as we've started doing, I'll also have an actual reading for you at the very end of the slides at the end of this video. And as always, if you're on Patreon, feel free to reach out to me there with questions, comments, needs for clarification, that sort of thing. All right, well, for now, from beautiful Wyoming, as always, let me wish you all the best.